For those of you who currently use Office 365, this landing screen should be very familiar to you. In this particular case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to click on the Admin Center. And when we go to the Admin Center, as we wait for the page to load, as we still wait for the...
Sure, it'll be up in just a second, Mark.
Nothing like doing live demos, right?
Yep.
Next time we should do a canned one. Anyways, here we go. Office 365 is being a little bit slow for me today, but as you can see, I expanded under the admin centers. I clicked on all admin centers. You'll notice that right here, there's one component. Oh, yeah, I don't want to rate you right now. You'll notice there's one component called Endpoint Management. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Endpoint Management. Now, Endpoint Management is, as it says, this is where you control InTune as well as Autopilot. So we're going to click on Devices. And what we're going to do is we're going to go by Platform, Windows. And we're going to look at Windows devices. So here, as you can see, these are a couple of machines that have been deployed as part and parcel of the solution. But the first thing we're going to see here is under Windows Enrollment. So you see under Windows Enrollment, we've got a couple of different categories. We've got both general and we've got autopilot. So what we'll do first and foremost is we're going to look at the automatic enrollment. And I just want to explain this one tab first and foremost. It's not really much here visually, but it's a very important component. So as part of the registration process, you do have the ability to be able to control whether all the machines that are authenticated by a user who has an Active Directory account that is legitimate can then register the devices within inside of your Active Directory and therefore automatically also enroll them into your mobile device management or your mobile application management. So in this particular case, I have it set to all. If you change those settings to some, then only certain people have the ability to be able to authenticate and register their devices, or of course, none. I think is fairly self-explanatory. This needs to be set, at least one of these two need to be set in order for InTune to work correctly, as well as Autopilot. If you have it set to none, nobody will be able to register their environment. So we're going to go back here real quick over to devices, Windows, and Windows Enrollment. All right, so down here, one of the first things that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to be able to create a deployment profile. What this deployment profile does is it allows you the ability to be able to control the behavior of how Autopilot runs. So we're going to look at this one that I've actually pre-created at this point, and we'll click on the properties. And as you run through this, you'll see that there's a few different components. So one of the things that we have here is you can see that there's what's called the OOB or out of box experience. And what that basically means is what happens on first boot, what happens when you turn on that machine. That's what the out of box experience means. So what we have right now is I have mine set to what's called a user-driven mode. What a user-driven mode means essentially is that the user has the ability to put some inputs in, such as do they want to allow the sharing of information across devices. So in other words, if somebody has two machines with the same account and they have cached passwords, what this will allow them to do is if they've input passwords in one machine, then that cache will be then transferred over to their other machine under their user ID profiles. So you also can set things like, for example, whether or not their Azure AD joined. In this particular case, I have it set that way. You can automatically configure the keyboards. And I'm not going to go through every single one. I think you get the picture. But one of the most important things that you should recognize is that there's allowed white glove experience and as well as user account type. User account type, you have either user or administrator. Depending on your corporate policies, you can either make the person a local admin of their machine, in which case you would set them to administrator, or you can have them as a regular user. In other words, at that point in time, they will no longer be able to install machines or install software on their machine. The white glove experience is effectively what that means is that you do have the ability to be able to have it so that there is zero touch input. And this is actually very good for administrators. So once a machine is assigned to a person, what you can do is you can actually have the person or the administrator click, I believe it's 7 times on the Windows key. And what that does is it bypasses the user login screen, completes the configuration, and then when that machine is finally handed to the person on a first boot, when the person logs into it, then they are then, at that point in time, the applications and the user configuration, not the PC configuration, but the user configuration is done. When we look at the non-out-of-box experience, what happens is that both the machine and user configuration happens once the user has been authenticated. All right, so we'll take a quick step back here, and I'm just going to show you a couple of other things. So you'll remember a couple of minutes ago, I got prompted for both MFA and for to set a PIN. Here's a global configuration that I have set for this particular demo environment, where, as you can see, I have the ability to be able to set, for example, PIN passwords or PIN length, PIN complexity, as well as to be able to enforce Windows Hello. From the MFA component that was actually established using Windows MFA, or I should say Office 365's MFA feature, the sheer fact that each user account has been set up in this demo tenant to authenticate through multi-factor authentication, that's where we got that component earlier when I was showing you the demo PC. All right. So we're going to take another quick step back here, which I think is very important, is that we're going to look at a couple of different things. So first and foremost, let's go to Windows 10 updates. So as you can see with inside of here, you do have the ability to update machines from a patch management standpoint. So whether you use WSUS today or any other component, or even if it's SMS, the ability to be able to do Windows patches is also available inside of the InTune. So everything that I'm showing you at this point in time right now are InTune features and no longer features of Autopilot. So with inside of this policy, you can see that we have different things that we can do. We have the ability to be able to change the service channels, right? So you have the type of rings that you want to allow to take place. In this particular case, you have product updates. You can allow for drivers. You can also defer updates. So in many cases, you may want to defer a particular update because you may be concerned that it may conflict with another application that exists on that machine, or for whatever reason, maybe you want to be able to test it. Maybe you have security policies in place that say that no new features or products or changes to machines will be made publicly available until such time as a QA or a security department has the ability to be able to review those changes. You can also see that you have things like, for example, hours. You also have maintenance windows, on and on. Everything you would expect as far as what a patch management solution for the Windows operating system. And with inside of this, there's also ways to be able to monitor certain things. So for example, you can see device status. You can see that, there's 2 machines here. One machine right now has a error and it's pending error. You can also see that one is successful. You also have user statuses that you can go through it. So in this particular case, this one error is due based on a system account problem. All right, and we'll take a quick step back here. And you'll also see that we also have feature update capabilities as well. So to be able to create a policy in most of these Intune environments, all you do is have to create. You can create a test name, give it a description. There's various Windows versions that you can have it applied to, right, or minimum versions as you go through. Next, so your assignments. You can select it to groups, right? You can select groups. In this particular case, we'll select a particular Active Directory group that I have pre-created. And we've got Empower Computers. And we'll select that group. And now we click Next. And away we go. We're going to create it. So now what we've done in this particular case is that we've actually created a update feature ring, or so for preview updates, which we applied to that particular group, showing what feature update versions need to be applied. So anybody in that AD group, or I should say any computer in that AD group, will now receive this policy and feature updates will be applied to them. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a step back. I'm going to go back to the Home tab. And actually, I'll just click on Apps on the side here. So with inside of the application section, there's some really neat things you can do. So one of the first things we can do is we can click on All Apps. And you'll see a list of applications that have been configured and set up for the various hardware types. So as you can see with the types, you've got anything from the Android store. You also have anything from the Office 365 Pro Plus suite. And for this particular demo, I actually have deployed some applications from this particular suite of products. So if you click on this, you'll be able to see, for example, that there is, 11 apps have been selected and for this particular profile, and here's the applications as part and parcel of the licensing that's available. Now, it's important to note that if the end user does not have the appropriate Office 365 license associated with them, they will not be able to receive these applications. Actually, let me correct that. The applications will be deployed, but they will not be able to utilize the applications due to licensing violation. The product will not start up. So for example, if I have the Office suite available to me, but my organization has not provided me a license for Visio Online Plan 2, even though I may choose to select this, the application will be deployed, but the first time I go to use Visio, it will ask me to authenticate with different credentials or to provide a key to be able to access the application itself. You also have the ability to be able to change various other suite configuration options, and you can drive down into all of these. So for example, here is an update ring or an update channel for the this particular suite. So you can say, for example, you want the latest updates, remove previous versions, on and on. So this is a way to be able to help maintain and keep your environments up to date and running. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to all apps right here because there's a couple of things I do want to show you. All right, so if you create a new application, you can select the type. So being as this is a Windows demo, you can see here that there's other flavors as well. So if you wanted to do it for Android, applications for Android and iOS are primarily deployed from their individual stores, just for a little bit of information. For Windows 10, you do have a couple of other configuration options, but I'm going to select Windows 10 in this particular case. And what we're going to do is I just wanted to show you that you can be able to say, for example, configure the app suite, and this is how you select what you want as part and parcel of the Office 365 deployments. But if I go back again and I go back to the to add a new app, there's one other thing I did want to show you just before I leave this particular section, is that here is your Win32 applications. So if you have anything that's MSI based, you do have the ability to package those MSIs, and even through configuration scripts, being able to deploy configuration scripts. So if there's answer files that need to be part of the deployment, you can bake all of those into an InTune deployment application, which then you could upload to InTune and then distribute it to the necessary machines. All right. From an endpoint security standpoint, just wanted to show you very quickly. You'll see that from an endpoint compliance standpoint, everything is in place. what we can do is there's some security baselines that you can create to be able to see how, to be able to establish certain things. So for example, you can create an edge baseline, or the Microsoft Edge baseline, and you can also see whether or not it's compliance. You can see the different profiles that have been put in place. No, don't have one here right now. There's also a version history. So for example, here's one of the baselines that's in place, is that you can have a minimum version of Edge, which has to be this particular version. Otherwise, the machine falls out of compliance. The benefit of this is that once you get all your machines registered with inside of your environment, you now start to be able to get some reporting. I mean, historically, one of the problems has been for a lot of organizations is ensuring that level of compliance, that everybody is using the same level of browser, or that everybody has certain levels of updates on their machines. But now through these the monitoring reporting windows, you have the ability to review your environment, find out who's out of compliance, why they're out of compliance, and then take the necessary action to make sure that your environment is as up to date as possible. All right, so let's just go back to the Home tab here. All right, and what I wanted to show you as well is, while we're here, was that there's also the ability to be able to do things like do troubleshooting and support. So under troubleshooting and support, you do have to be able to select users or apps, and if there's a problem, it will actually report back on some of the error logs that have taken place. So if you don't know why something's happening, this section here will help you identify that. All right. So the only other thing that I want to jump into right now is everybody's favorite, is going into Azure Active Directory. Now, keeping in mind that Active Directory is the brain behind everything, and it does control all your environments. All authentication and mechanisms do tie back to Azure Active Directory. So there's a couple of quick things that I do wanted to show you. One of the first things that I wanted to show you in here was this particular piece here, this company branding. Now, company branding itself is, as you can see, I have a default profile. The profiles are generally based on languages. So what you can do is if you create a new language, so whether it's French or German, you can create a branding profile based on languages. There's a few things you can do. So for example, you can customize backgrounds. You can do things like what I showed you earlier on the sign-in page text. You'll notice we're here where it says Empower 2020 EMS Intune Demo. That is where that information comes from. So being able to do that allows for your ability to be able to make sure that your environment has a homogeneous feel, where every machine is branded with your company logos, and it feels like you have that ability to all work together, same computer, same environment. The other thing I wanted to show you is, for those of you who are not familiar with Azure Active Directory, it's very similar to on-premise Active Directory. There are some changes, but ultimately at the end of the day, it still works by the concept. There are groups. These are the groups that I've created. So for our Empower 2020 computers and Empower 2020 users, you'll notice that under this computer group, if I go there and I go under members, you'll notice that the two machines that were showing up as part of Intune, and which were also associated with the various profiles I showed you earlier, are all listed in here. So this is how Intune knows what machines to include with inside of what scope. So you can create multiple profiles. You could create a profile, for example, for HR, and then have a different Intune and Autopilot experience than that from, let's say, the marketing department or from sales department. So you can customize these based on what target devices you're looking to deploy. All right. So the next thing that I want to show you is I'm going to switch back to our handy dandy demo environment here. And in the background, while I've been talking, this machine has been updated. So there's a few things I want to show you. So first and foremost is under the security policy, you'll see something here called fake VPN. I had created a VPN policy earlier, which is a security policy that I created, that was applied to this particular machine. So if you need to deploy VPN settings and configurations, you would have the ability to do so through this particular, through that service. And because this was a user profile, only once the user was logged into the desktop would this be applied. And the second thing that I wanted to show you here is that, okay, demo error. I actually had configured a redirect for this particular, for Microsoft Edge, but it could be that it's still applying. And also you'll notice that Microsoft Outlook has been deployed through Intune as well. So all in all, this machine still may be updating sometimes depending on the number of policies you've applied, the speed of your internet bandwidth, the number of applications you deployed. It can take a bit of time for all of these configuration settings to take place. So what I would recommend, especially if you're providing it to an end user for the first time, is you would tell them, before lunch, go take, log in, lock your workstation, and go for a walk. And when they've done that, by the time they come back, their machine should be ready to go. All right, so you'll notice that through the auto-discover records for your users, in this particular case, configuring Microsoft Outlook, that the user's name has already been populated. It already knows the domain. So now it's adding the account to Outlook, and the account is added automatically and successfully. Outlook is now starting up. All right, so anyways, we don't need that right now. So at this point in time, there we go. You'll see that Outlook is setting up the profile for the first time. Email is being downloaded, all without user intervention, no configuration required. If you use Microsoft Teams as your communication and collaboration client, the experience would be the same with Microsoft Teams. The name would be automatically populated, no configuration required, and away they go. So at the end of the day, Autopilot and Intune is a very secure and easy way to deploy computers, not only internally, but especially for your remote users.